Welcome back to the AI Driven Marketer. I'm Dan Sanchez. My friends call me Danchez. And I had the privilege of doing an interview with Jason Telmos, who's the VP of Product Marketing over at 6 Sense. Actually, just got back from their conference called Breakthrough over in Las Vegas just a few days ago. And I wanted to let you guys in on what they were actually doing with AI in their product. They had an amazing lineup of some AI tools that are coming to 6 Sense. And I think it's a big deal. It's almost an industry defining moment because they're leading the pack on what I think is going to become a standard play for a lot of big SaaS companies. Not just using AI as a feature of the product, but using AI that becomes almost the new UI for how you get value out of that product. So I break down a number of different things that I think are very exciting for 6 Sense, but I want you to pay special attention to how they're incorporating AI and what that means for your workflows, your tools, and of course, if you're like mid-market to enterprise, this tool, 6 Sense, you found out from yesterday's episode, but this is going to be a game changer for you. This is a fantastic tool in order to get insight into what your buyers are doing, to get insight into which buyers are actually beginning to enter the market for what it is you sell. I've become a fan of 6 Sense after going through their conference, and I am drinking a little bit of the Kool-Aid here for good reason. I've seen a lot of AI tools. I'm very excited for the direction they're going as a company, and I will be cheering for them now on the sideline from my podcast. So, without further ado, here is the interview with Jason. Stage, and you were giving us the big updates about 6 Sense.
Yep.
I love the energy you were putting out too, because you're not just a VP of product or product marketing. You're a past customer of 6 Sense. You've been in the game.
Yep.
You've actually been doing it, so you know the pain, you know the trial,
Yeah.
You understand the audience.
Yep.
And I think that, I don't know, that I could feel it as you were talking about it. You were excited about these new updates.
Yeah.
But I'd love it if you could go back a little bit to what it was like to be a customer, but even farther back, like for those people who have never heard of 6 Sense, kind of give me the original vision on how you got involved and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, and I remember being in that exact spot. I didn't tell the story on stage, but I started my career in marketing, but really in consulting. So I worked for a smaller boutique go-to-market firm, and it was basically my very first project that I had ever been on. Before that, I was basically cleaning up PowerPoints. But my first at bat, they're like, all right, Telmos, you're in, get in here. And I went into a company and was sitting in the room with our sales guy on the consulting side and the CMO of the company that we were working with, a couple of their execs, and they're all talking about these things. And they're primarily sales guys, right? So they're telling them about like, oh, we're gonna drive growth and revenue, and we're gonna do ABM, and everyone's like nodding their heads. And I'm like, yeah, great. They're like, all right, Telmos, you're gonna deliver this project. Go do an ABM. I'm like, all right, awesome, cool. So I go back to my hotel room and I'm like,
what is that?
What is ABM? And I'm like trying to figure it out. And I was talking to a buddy of mine because I just couldn't. I'm like, well, this is B2B, right? Like, isn't everything account-based marketing and B2B? Like, you're not selling to a consumer. So it took me a minute to wrap it around. And it's actually how I found out about 6 Sense. It was my first really foray into kind of this MarTech world because I Googled it, right? And of course, one of the first things that came up at the time was 6 Sense. And so I did a bunch of reading, a bunch of learning. And basically since then, the way that I came to realize what ABM is and kind of wrap my own head around it was pretty simple, right? Like, we're selling to accounts, but really what 6 Sense is and what ABM vendors and kind of the space has always been is we need two things. We need signals, right? We need to understand what these people are doing, who they are, what they look like, how many employees they have, like those sorts of things, and scores, right? So like, are they interested in our product? How interested would they be, right? And that's really kind of at the core of 6 Sense, because when we talk about account-based marketing, it's a segmentation exercise. Like, I want to go and market to all of these accounts, and I don't want to send them all the same exact thing, right? Like, if I have one ad campaign that goes to 1,000 accounts, like, there's no way that one campaign is going to be the thing that meets everybody where they're at and is saying the message that's going to convert, right? So the ultimate goal is to get as refined as you can. Like, if you could get down to that individual account level and say, what is that company, like, what are they doing? What are they interested in? And how would I market to them? And so in order to do that, you need a lot of data and information. And there were a few other options around here. This is really early on, kind of in the days of ABM and 6 Sense. And 6 Sense just came out the gate with intent data and predictive scoring that were light years ahead of anything else, right? Like everyone else is starting to say like, hey, we have AI in our product. Like that is basically, what we came out the gate with.
I remember when I came into B2B first, I was working in B2C, and like many marketers who get into B2B, it's almost like B2C is your proving ground, and then you get good at it, which means you start teaching other marketers how to do what you did, and then in that transition you end up in B2B.
Yep, exactly.
B2B is where you grow up and start to actually do marketing to marketers.
Totally.
Right, or something like that. I discovered ABM, and it's hard to wrap your mind around it at first, because you're like, oh wait, you mean psychographics, demographics? They're like, no, firmographics, specific accounts. It's in B2B, you know who you're targeting.
Yeah.
And you can get literally all the contact info. You can even get the personal home address if you so desire for your accounts. But that's no longer the barrier. You know who they are, but now you have to actually market to them.
Exactly.
And while there's a future podcast episode, we're going to go into the research about people not being in market and what that means.
Yeah.
It's exciting that 6th Sense is actually getting that intent data. Did the company start with that in mind? They're like, we want to figure out when companies are going to make the move to purchase so we can be there when they do.
Yeah, it really started with, there's got to be these signals out there, right? Like if we look at a B2B sale and we know there's a buying committee of some sort and somebody's researching, hey, I need some new accounting software or whatever it is, right? There's got to be things that they're doing. They're searching for blogs to educate them about that, right? Like there's all this activity that's happening. So how can we surface that? And so it really started with building out that network, the intent network, so we can understand and get all that keyword level intent, right? Because you had some of the other kind of players in the space are getting more of a topic level. We're kind of like assuming, at the topic level, like, hey, we'll kind of pull some things together, and generally speaking, they're probably researching this topic. And that's good, but what 6th Sense really was about was like, no, let's get granular, and anything that you want to talk about, let's go and figure that out. And then once we've done that, now how can we start to take all that stuff in here? And that's where predictive comes in for us to actually come in and kind of what are all those signals mean together.
I heard there's, in the early origin, there's like an idea that AI is going to be really important.
Yeah.
It's not yet, but it will be someday. Is that true?
Yeah, totally. And it was funny, I was talking to Viral, one of our founders, the other day, and he was pulling something back up in Figma from a few years ago, pretty early on. I'm trying to remember. It was AI orchestrations or something, but it was it was so ahead of its time. Him and I were looking. I'm like, oh, this is basically like this is where we're going right now. And then what they were trying to do back then, and honestly, I think we had it. It was before its time.
Wasn't it?
It was like describe the outcome that you want, and we're going to use all of our knowledge with predictive and our understanding of B2B cycles and the opportunities in your CRM, and we're going to figure out when you should send them an ad and what it should be. And we kind of tried to go down that route, and I don't know, it didn't quite take off. I don't know if we fully rolled it out, but it was pretty early on. But that's always been really kind of baked into the DNA of 6th Sense is, how are we using AI to really automate a lot of these things and make decisions and get information that just wouldn't be possible with the scale, for a human.
When I first did my deep dive on ABMs probably 3 years ago, and I was trying to learn everything there was to know about it, 6th Sense stood out as like, they're the best at figuring out intent. When people are sending signals, they have the best data on that. And that's kind of like, that was your main thing. That's why it stood out from the competitors. And I was like, okay. And I've kind of always had, it's software, but it's kind of a data company. It's going places, but it's still kind of a data company. It's more than ZoomInfo, because ZoomInfo is just contact records. It's kind of
Contacts,
like, so this is powerful, but you still have to send it to other places in order to do anything with it. It's got to go to the ad platform. It's got to go to your email provider. It's just data and recognizing it, and then it kicks it off, and then you can do things with it. Great. Today, after seeing the announcements that you guys launched today, I'm like, it almost feels like 6th Sense has finally stepped into what the original idea was.
Totally.
And now it's got all the infrastructure, all the data. You had a number of different updates today, and I want to talk about a bunch of them, especially Revy AI I'm most excited about. But tell me a little bit about how you feel now as a company. Do you feel like this is the moment? Did I kind of discern that right? Like, we finally are at the place where we can go ahead and be more than kind of a data company.
Totally. Like, if you look at the arc of it, right? Like, when we say ABM, like, there's a realization that it is a little bit of a nebulous term. It was a little bit of a buzzwordy for a while, right? And like, okay, I get the idea of account-based marketing as a methodology or an ideology, but like as a software category, right? Like, you've got your maps, you got your CRMs, and ABM is like that. Hey, that's our bread and butter. But like, if you really look at what it is, it is those two things. It's data, right? It's signals and scores to help you segment. It's segmenting your audiences, right? So it's a really good segmentation platform. And for whatever reason, advertising is a thing that kind of got bolted on there, right? So you see the Terminus and demand base and us and so that's kind of there. But really, like our bread and butter hat was always on that data side to be able to do that. And then you've seen over the past few years, investments in sales intelligence. We brought in AI email agents. Right now, we launched intelligent workflows this year. And so, I like to think about it as a balance, right? Those signals and scores being the who. Like, who should we invite to this webinar? Who should we spend media budget on? Who should sales talk to, right? Like, if we can help you answer who, that's that precision segmentation. And then there's the what, like, what do we do about it now? And that's where you think about the channels and the workflows that you're using to orchestrate kind of the entire market motion from there. And so, we're seeing a lot of other people in the space now kind of catch up to the or come up to the idea that the signals and scores, that's actually a really important piece, particularly now in this age of AI, right? I think there was likely maybe with you too for a while, a belief that, well, it's data, it's a data thing. But now I think the industry is coming around to like, oh no, I need those signals. Like I want to know when someone's researching my competitor. Like I need to know like where they are in their buying stage. I need to know like if there's a job change here, because that is the kind of stuff that's really going to like inform and trigger our market. And so
before data was helpful, but let's be honest, everyone was big data and we were all drowning in it. Nobody knew what to do about it. But now we have this thing called AI, which can actually take action based on that data. So you're like, oh crap, who's got the data? Oh wait, Sixth Sense has been like preparing for this moment for over a decade. And now it's time.
Right, now it's time to think about what we've been doing, right? For the past decade, we've had experience building out machine learning, NLP, and different types of AI, all within the context of a B2B sales cycle, right? Across thousands of organizations, and right? So like we have that domain expertise of marrying B2B and AI, where I don't know that there's another company who has the kind of legacy and pedigree and experience to be able to apply that. And so now we're in this place where we have all of this data, we have all of these signals, and we have the means to activate what we're doing on that side in ways that really nobody else can. And then you mentioned Revy, you kind of put that interaction layer on top, and it's definitely a game changer.
You mentioned something on stage that I thought was interesting. It was kind of like a behind the scenes thing, but I thought it was worth even mentioning here because you're using AI internally in order to make even your base layer of data better. To the point where you can identify the right accounts to focus on, and then you use kind of like a manual / AI process to essentially make your data so clean that for the most important accounts, it's, I think you said 98% accurate. So that's huge.
And it is huge, and it's, you could probably go on the internet and find dozens of companies who say, oh, we have intent data and we have, this thing. And really the key differences, there are one, the breadth of that intent data, like how much are you actually getting? But two, the biggest one is, are you actually able to attribute it and map it back to the account in the right way? Right? Because the name of this game is all about efficiency, like we've been talking about, right? Which means like, I've got $100 and I got to figure out how to spend that on the right accounts to turn them into an opportunity. And so the theory is, hey, if you can tell me what each of those accounts are researching and get specific and make sure I spend the right dollar on the right campaign for that, right? But if that matching to that account is wrong,
then you might be automating something bad.
You're actually becoming more inefficient, right? So you're actually driving poorer results. And so that's where, even it's not the external facing stuff that you see with Sixth Sense, but we have multiple patents for our network, how we de-anonymize traffic and how we match things. It's called our ID graph. And that goes hand in hand with our data cleaning, our standardization, our taxonomy building, like all of these things that are maybe a little bit more nerdy, right? That like, it's a lot of our folks, probably the people here too, love this stuff. But like getting that piece right is really important. And, I think it's easy for us to look at the rest of the industry and say like, we're going to chase vanity metrics, right? We want like 1 billion accounts and we have every contact you could ever need. But we pretty quickly realized like you're just going to boil the ocean trying to do that, right? And so coming out of our
diminishing returns, no matter how far you go, so it's like just kind of like when they get the census data. Like getting to 80%'s not very hard. Getting to 90%'s really hard. Getting the last 10% extremely expensive.
Exactly.
But like, do you really need the last 5%? Probably not.
Right, exactly. And so that's the idea, right? If we're like, hey, we're really hyper focused. Like our mission is we need to give people as many signals and scores as I can to create those really precise audiences and give them the means to activate it.
Yep.
That means we have to nail the data quality piece.
Yep.
And so for us to this new process that our head of product for data, Prejo, and his team put together over the past year is kind of layering all these other things together, because we can actually go and look, right? Part of the great thing about what we do is we have all this data that we can use to like improve the data product itself, right? So we can look at the accounts that are actually being used in 6th Sense advertising campaigns, that are in segments that our customers are creating, that are showing intent keywords for the things that our customers are selling. And so we can get a pretty good idea of what that relative entity universe is. And so that became kind of the first tranche of like, all right, we're not going to try and do this for everyone. We've got the process down, but it's not a flip a switch, right? Like we've got some systematic and programmatic things that we're doing here. We're using generative AI in a lot of places and different forms of AI to make sure this is right. And then we also have a pretty extensive human in the loop process to like go and physically verify and validate a lot of these things, because we want to make sure that if, when we give you this data, that it is not making you more inefficient, right? That it is actually,
it's garbage in, garbage out. And you got the good stuff
Totally.
coming in, which makes it all so much more efficient.
Yep.
Now, there's a number of different updates you gave, and I want to spend a lot of time again on Revy AI. But before we jump into like the individual updates, from a product marketing perspective, I know there's usually a philosophy around the updates. You don't just like, oh, well, they want A, B, and C. The users want it, and we kind of want these.
Yeah.
There's usually a direction, a strategic direction you're going. So how would you tell people like the direction you're going as far as how all these products are fitting together?
Yeah, I mean, you've heard me say it a few times already in this with the signals and scores, the activation workflow, and that's really intentional. When I came into 6th Sense a little over a year ago, obviously with a lot of context, right? As a customer before that, and then I mentioned as a consultant, I implemented 6th Sense dozens of times, right? So I've kind of been in and around the ecosystem for a while, and so before joining, there was somewhat of a realization on my end that there's a little bit of opportunity with how 6th Sense was being messaged in the market. And I think my overall judgment assessment, from my own point of view, talking to customers, talking to people I know in the industry, is that maybe there was a lack of clarity. We kind of lost our sight of the like, who are we? Like, what do we? It's ABM, but ABM in itself is
so much more than that now. So
right,
you're like, what's the new category?
Yeah, and you start to ask people like, what is 6th Sense? And it's like, well, we use them for, and it was kind of difficult, right? And so, for me coming in, I really wanted to anchor on like, let's just be clear and honest around like what we do, because there's a lot. Like you can go and see a lot of the MarTech companies today kind of sound the same thing, right? Like we're all kind of recycling.
Increase revenue.
Yeah, drive
ultimate
pipeline,
platform,
right?
all in one, AI.
Yeah, and we want to do all these things. And I'm like, guys, we build audiences, and there's nothing dirty about that, right? Like that is the fundamental mechanism for every single sales and marketing team in the world, right? Is like, we've got some campaigns, we've got some webinars we're going to run, we've got some things we're going to do. Who do we send it to? Right? That is the biggest and number one question. Even as a marketing leader and practitioner myself, that's where things always start, right? It's like, are we pulling some, like we have a massive list in Marketo we're using because like that's our send list, and we have no idea like who these people are, how they even got here, right? And so, I think that's really the center of where we're moving forward. And you heard Chris talk about it, is like, let's lean into our core competencies. Let's be clear around, moving forward. This is really, when you think about 6th Sense, what are you buying? What are you coming to us for? It is, you need data, right? You need signals and scores to prioritize and segment your audiences. And then you need the way to orchestrate how all those things are going to, get executed.
Yeah. I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but from the outside, it seems like that's not your focus. Like, let me explain. It seems like essentially, you've already done that part really well, and everybody knows you for that. But based on the updates that I'm seeing, and we'll cover them, it seems like now a lot of the product focus is like actually taking advantage or taking action on it.
Yeah.
More than having it, more than segmentation, it's actually like putting that data to work.
I would agree with that to an extent. So we have a really good foothold on the data that we have. Yeah. But what we've seen, and what we even know as our own marketing team, is that we cannot and will not own every piece of data that is relevant to every single person. And so for us on the signals and the score side, it's less about let's have more intent keywords or something like that. But it's how can we bring in more data from more places, new types of data, and that, we're seeing players that are in the space today that weren't around 5-10 years ago when we were coming up, and you wouldn't think of any of them as an ABM player, right? But like you can start to connect the dots of these people who are have different types of signals and data providers and new entrants into the industry, and that's I think reflective of where the industry is going. Is this need for we want less of a walled garden, and like people continue to come to 6sense for our intent data and our predictive scoring. Like that is by and large why our customers come to 6sense and stay with 6sense, because that data is invaluable for the go-to-market. And so the goal for us now is how do we marry that up with the rest of the data in their ecosystem? How do we help them bring in data from more places? And then we want to be really intentional about the how we activate it, and I'll break that into two. So there's our native activation channels. Like I think of these as like your iPhone comes with a mail app, a notes app, and kind of stock standard, good for the general population of people. But you can go on an app store and you can find a much more robust email app, notes app, whatever it is, for a more advanced. And I think that's, for us, we're trying to be really intentional about that line for us. Things that make sense for us to own, which is, has been advertising originally, email, and we talked about today, adding chat, which I think makes a ton of sense for us, and we can dive into why. But, just like in data, we don't want to boil the ocean. We're not going to try to get into every activation channel. We're like, there's a lot of things that other partners, a lot of people here do, they do well, that we have no,
like you're not going to out Salesforce.
Right. Like
so you created an integration with Salesforce to put the data in there, or vice versa.
Exactly. Or like lean data is a great example. Like they have great routing, they have dual things. We're never going to want to build that out. We want to work with them so that you can use that in the middle of a workflow to do some routing, those sorts of things. And that's really the goal, is for us to maintain that like native activation channels that are lower market and less sophisticated companies who are coming in and are just starting this journey with ABM. They can leverage them out of the box, right? Yeah. We also know that those are the ones, kind of similar to like the Apple example, that are really deeply integrated into our ecosystem and can take advantage of our intent keywords and our AI personalization and our predictive models. Like they are ripe for those tools. And so we want to invest in those, and then everything else, that's where workflows comes in. It's about how do we connect the rest of their tech in their ecosystem so that everything can kind of power through 6sense. We hear people talk a lot about like a system of record, and I think for us, the term I really like to use is the center of gravity. Like we don't need to be this place that everything lives necessarily, but what we really want to do is be the place that you can go and kind of put all the pieces together. And that's been, something I think we've really seen with workflows, is that one big canvas that kind of you can visualize your entire go-to-market.
So let's talk about the workflows, because I think one of the feature updates that you were like, hey, we finally did this, and everybody was like, oh, it's like a sigh of relief, because I guess it was missing before, was the ability to trigger automations based on signals. Yeah. That was a manual process before, but now it's an automated process. Yeah. All of a sudden you get some intent data, maybe an executive changes jobs, or they just raise a round of funding, whatever the signal is.
Totally.
It can now kick off an automated workflow.
Yep.
So that's new, and that releases a whole bunch of possibilities probably now, but I imagine you have a roadmap of all kinds of things that's going to be able to do.
Totally. Yeah, it's really big. And so the workflows, which we just released earlier this year, right, is fantastic, and there's some really strong use cases for more of your like always on programmatic type marketing campaigns. And our data enrichment, right? So basically, you have to start with a segment. So you already would have been in 6sense, and you would have defined a segment, like our accounts who are in this vertical and have this many employees researching these things, right? And so like that's your starting point. And then you essentially set it, right? Like how often do you want this workflow to run? I want to run it on demand, so I'm going to come in today and run it, or daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. So really great, really good use cases. But there's a ton of things that you don't want to wait for the upload, right? For the workflow to run. So instead of taking a large segment of accounts and essentially branching them through, so taking that one big segment and creating smaller segments, which is basically what we're doing in workflows today, is we're going to say, let's start with the signal that we want to listen for. And so anytime we see, oh, there's been a job change, we look at that one account that triggered that signal, and then we put them through a workflow that you can dictate all kinds of things, right? So you can say there was a job change at Google, right, or whatever it is, And now I can come in and I can look, do we have all the contacts for the buying team? Oh, we don't. Okay, let's purchase and unlock the contacts that are missing. Okay, great.
Yep.
Now let's send those to an AI email agent who's going to use all of the research and keyword activity and everything they're doing to send multi-threaded emails. Meanwhile, we're also covering with advertising air cover on top of it, again, relevant to them. We're going to
drop
Slack
a notification.
alert, right,
Yeah. So
to
people,
the rep.
it's like, oh, look, that campaign got triggered a day ago. Oh, you can either go and turn it off because maybe it was misaligned or whatever. Maybe it was a misfire. Probably not. Or you could be like, great, let me make some modifications and double down on this.
Yeah, and like, you know, we're talking to one of our customers earlier today. Like the power of this is like there's a lot of these scenarios that you they're trying to do manually. Like somebody was a cybersecurity company, right? And they're like, so anytime that somebody's in the news for some kind of breach, right, that is immediate signal for us, right? So we can come in. And so, you know, kind of how they've done that in the past is they've got a Google alert set up, or they're trying to, you know, they have account lists, and maybe sales team's trying to look, and it's a super manual process. And that really was like, that's ABM 101 at some point, is right? You have a small amount of accounts and you do deep research. But, you know, something like this, now we're really talking like, you set up the signal that you want to listen for, and then you be very clear and dictate what you want to happen coming out of that. Yeah. And then that is like a next level of, you know, outside of the intent keywords and data that we're going to provide, like you can get really specific around the signals that you need to react to for your business.
I find with data like this and with the kinds of triggers and automations you can now put into it and the AI on top of it. I mean, we used to talk about ABM as like a one-to-many, one-to-few, one-to-one. And all these new tools essentially pushes everything up a level. What you only could do one-to-one before, well, now you could do it one-to-few. What you could only do one-to-few before, you can kind of scale the one-to-many pretty accurately now.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so like, really, if you look back and now we're at the place where we're past this, was that we kind of traded one problem for another with ABM. So ABM looked at, you know, marketing automation and said, like, you guys are doing all this automation, but you're doing it by sacrificing personalization, right? So like with traditional demand gen and marketing automation is like, we're going to sacrifice having more personalized content in lieu of us being able to like push it out and automate it fast. And then ABM kind of went really far the other way and said, okay, we're going to give up some of this automation in the name of personalization, so we can have more personalized experiences. We have the one-to-one, the one-to-few, and one-to-money, and that's really good, particularly when you have like a small number of accounts you're really focused on. But I think what a lot of us saw is, unless you have like a very finite universe, and there are certainly companies, I worked for one of these before, that is like, there are 300 accounts that you're going to sell to. They all know who you are and you know who they are. And so like that's, you can get really specific. The rest of them, it's like the one-to-one, one-to-few is like, you want to reach all of them. You don't want to pick between which one or the other. So you're kind of using that one-to-one, one-to-few segmentation to accommodate for the fact that you can't scale that automated and personalized motion. And that's kind of the moment where we're at now, is with what we're talking about and what success is, where we're going is you can do both. You can say, I want to automate these experiences, but I don't want them to be generic. I don't want them to be spam. I don't want them to be to everybody. I want to be specific and intentional around what campaigns and what experiences I send to who and when and why and what it's about.
A few of the things you have come out is you did a whole new Chrome extension, very exciting. Essentially, from what I saw, you can now pull up information about an individual buyer or a company, and it just kind of pulls the data based on where they're at in the funnel, intent signals they've shown, and that's really cool. You've launched a chatbot, which is cool. The one I want to know about more, though, is your email agent. I know there's a strategic acquisition some time ago. Now you're integrated into the stack. Like, what does this email look like? Hyper-personalized.
So, and you know, this one's really interesting because there was a little bit of a gap, right? So you've got marketing automation like mass nurture, right? Which there is a place for, right? Like we're going to invite a bunch of people to an event like Breakthrough, or we're going to follow up. Like you want to blast this thing out, you want it to be pretty each email, great. Then you've got like your SEPs, right? Who you got a BDR or something, like they've got their cadences that go down. But there's kind of this in between use case, which is like, as a marketer, I don't want to always wait for or have to, you know, put everything on the BDR SDR to have any type of personal interaction, right? So like we want to have somewhat of a personalized touch in the middle of that customer journey and that buyer journey, and not wait until they're all the way at the end to finally be like, hey Steve, how are you, right? Like, and so that's where AI email comes in, and it's really interesting, right? So you can think about everything we're doing with our signals and score side and say, okay, we know who this account is. We know they're in our ICP. We know who the people are at that account, and what they're researching, and probably kind of what, where their head's at and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we can take all of that and use it to write an email. Again, somewhat of it ahead of its time, because we've had this for a number of years, right? And like now we're all starting to see kind of this Gen AI written thing.
Can you trigger email to be personalized based on an intent trigger?
Yeah.
So like someone raises a new round of funding, bam, you're starting to send emails to the top 5, the whatever you define as your buyer group, right? The people that are most likely to be the ones thinking about your software or whatever you're selling. And then it automatically starts a pre-built campaign based on that trigger.
But that's exactly right, with a little nuance. So once we get signals live, that trigger will work. Right now, it's pretty similar, but it has run through a segment, right? So like we basically look and say, hey, if they're researching these types of things, then we want to push them to this email agent, and that runs, whatever. So if tomorrow morning they wake up and Acme triggers that thing, then it's like, okay, they're going to be in this email agent. And what it's doing is you have these reply scenarios, right? And so that was another big thing we talked about today. But so there's kind of a handful of stock reply scenarios, like, are they engaging with you? Are they asking, are they punting it to another person? Did they not respond? And it kind of just gives the AI instructions of what to do and how to respond.
Okay.
And then, so the email goes out. If a reply comes in, it's classified by AI to figure out which bucket it goes into. And then depending on where it falls, we can reply to it, right? And so now with custom reply scenarios, you can actually dictate whatever scenario you want. So you're like, if they mention our competitor, or if they bring up pricing, or they say their favorite color is blue, here's what I want you to do, right?
Yeah. Do you essentially have to create like an FAQ database to handle every single response?
No, so it's, you could if you wanted to. So like if you wanted to, if there are really specific things, you're like, hey, if they ask about pricing, like this is exactly what I want. Or like if they say like, hey, if they bring up some FUD against one of our competitors, like we want to make sure like you do it. Otherwise, it's going to handle all of those for you. And you upload a knowledge base, and there's a training process to kind of dictate the things that are important. It'll understand your brand and your product and everything there, and so it kind of maintains voice.
But essentially it's email, but it's working like a chatbot. It's just a slower conversation, right?
Absolutely.
But you give it a goal. Here's your purpose. Here's the scenario we're sending out. This is what's being sent out when they reply.
Exactly.
Here's where you're trying to get them to. Here's some common objections that you can handle.
Exactly.
But I mean, all conversational AI kind of handles it the same way.
It's really no different, right?
Yeah.
Which is why you saw us do this with chat, because I think it makes a ton of sense, right? And so like
it's the same tech.
The idea is like, hey, we've got some kind of generative AI that has a knowledge base behind it that can handle different reply scenarios, understands our business and our product. And right now that lives in an inbox, right? And then now it's going to live in chat. And the thing to me that's most important, why those two channels in particular, I think we talked about the intentionality with our activation channels. Those two are big because they become signals themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So like if we think back to the signals and the triggers that we're thinking of workflows, now I can also set up a signal that says, hey, if somebody's on our website and they start chatting with our chatbot and they ask about our competitor and they want to know the differences, like that's a signal. Yeah. And now I can dictate whatever I want to happen, right? Like maybe I'm going to send an email to them. Maybe I'm going to put some air cover. Like maybe I alert my sales team that a company is on the account. They're asking about X, Y, and Z, right? And so now you can get really specific around the types of interactions you're facilitating.
Man, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And 6th Sense pretty much has the monopoly on the intent signals. I'm like, well, I wish my CRM could do that. It cannot do that.
And that's kind of that's where we want to play though with everybody else, right? It's like, everyone's got their secret sauce too. So.
Yep. So the last thing you guys were kind of finished up with, which is the most exciting part, which is this thing called Revy AI.
Yeah.
So give me the big picture view of Revy.
Yeah.
And then I have questions to follow up with.
Totally. Yeah. Of all the things, this is probably the biggest one for me, and not just just it's a conversational thing. Like we put aside the fact that everybody's
it's more than a chatbot. In there. It's more than that.
Yeah. They're an understanding for us internally that like this is an interface that everybody is moving towards, right? There's nothing necessarily unique by the fact that like, hey, you can talk to this. For me, why this is so important is that I think of this as an entirely new interaction layer. And the way I like to think about it is, if you remember Steve Jobs, the iPhone, the original announcement, you watched that, right? It's an iPod, it's a web, those sorts of things. But he gets through and he talks about multi-touch, right? Like he spends a lot of time talking about multi-touch, and it's this new thing, and you can pinch and zoom. And multi-touch itself is not a product. It's not a software feature that you see inside of the iPhone, but it completely changes how you use the product, right?
Completely.
It enables use cases that would not have been possible before. Entire industries and apps and everything were born out of the fact that there is this new way to interact with something. And so for us, that's what Revy is. Myself as a customer, we talk to all of our customers, a lot of people. The reason that there are thousands of people at Breakthrough right now is because people understand and realize that there's a ton of power and a ton of data baked inside of 6 Sense, and they need help trying to
do something with
it, right? Because it can be tough. And we've got features. I told someone the other day, like, I honestly believe that we could not produce a single new feature in 6 Sense for 2 years and just re-release a bunch of things that most of our customers don't even realize we have, and it would be like super impactful. We're not going to do that, but so that's why Revy, I think, is really important to me, right? So because it finally pays off the purpose of being able to create precision segmentation, right, and intentional, intelligent orchestration. Because if you think about some of the common use cases, and I think as the example we gave on stage was like, I want to find all of the accounts who are current customers that are coming up for renewal, that haven't been on our website, that are researching competitors, right? And like, you kind of rattle off this thing, and it's like what I have in my head. Well, it's like, we actually tried this example too with one of our customers, and it's not impossible, but it took long enough for us all to be like, I don't know, like, which CRM field is this, and what's the and so that level of complexity, particularly for some of our users who aren't like power users or they're new to 6 Sense, the learning curve dramatically flattens now, right? Because it is just a matter of, hey, can I describe to you the types of accounts I want to target, right? Can I describe to you the advertising campaign I want to run and why I want to run it, what my objectives are, and then let it kind of process and do its things. And then the last piece is what I think we hear a lot of people asking about is the data and the reporting underneath it. So we've got a really robust reporting and analytics suite. A lot of customers don't know about, or they know about the one report that they really use, and they ask about something. We're like, yeah, it's right here, because that's like we're smart, right? They're like, I know 6 Sense has this data, and this data exists in my CRM, and this is over here in Map, and so I want to know all of the accounts who are like doing this and showing this intent, and they're also in CRM, and so like they want to connect all these dots, right? But it's almost impossible to do that. And so now, in a world where you can actually just type in what you want, all of that stuff becomes much more accessible.
And for those, this is a video podcast. I know you could see us talking, but I'm not going to have a visual up on the screens. This feature is brand new. Maybe if I get the video asset, I might be able to throw it up there. But if not, then this looks, it looks simple. It looks small. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh. I knew this was coming, and it was a matter of time, but I haven't seen anybody else do this yet. I knew it was around the corner, and I've seen people fake it, and it's not quite that.
Yeah.
But it looks like a chatbot just coming up in the corner of the app. Yeah. Right? It looks like a chatbot, but it's so much more than a chatbot, because a chatbot doesn't have context. This one has the context of the whole database.
Exactly.
Plus information about your business, you have to fill it in, and it can take action. So for me, I'm sure a lot of people have positioned it as agentic. I'd say the email thing is more agentic because it's autonomous. It can work without you.
Yeah.
This, I think you said this from the stage too. It was like AI as UI, right? As user interface. Yeah. It's like a whole different way. And I've seen even some people talk about it as AI's OS. It's a whole operating system.
Totally.
We're used to clicking around SaaS, around the graphs and the fields, and like maneuvering and move. Because of that, we've all become copy pasters. I don't know about you. Like most of my marketing career is now spent just copying and pasting information from one place to another. But now with this, you're interacting with the app through AI. You're like, hey, run this campaign, and it asks you a question, maybe follows up, and then you're like, oh yes, let's do that. Or any kind of report you want. That was always a nightmare. I felt like marketers spent maybe half their jobs defending what happened or trying to pitch what they should do. Yeah. Like half of our jobs as marketers, especially in B2B, is just that. But now, if you have something like this, you could be like, hey, like, what's working, like as vague as what's working well right now. Exactly. And it could try to figure it out. Or you could be highly specific, like, hey, in Q2 of this year, what were the accounts that almost made it but we didn't quite close on? Yeah. Exactly. It can give you that. And then you could be like, hey, what are some strategies we can do to circumvent that? Yep. And then you could be like, okay, do that. Yeah, exactly. And it will start taking action for you. You're like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
And again, informed by a decade of AI and B2B experience,
Yeah.
and those two things married up, right? Like I like to think of it as, like everyone knows ChatGPT, right? Like
Yeah.
I like to think of it as our go-to-market GPT, right?
Yep.
Because it really is it's that chat interface, but the important part that you called out is that it has the context. It has all of the context of your 6sense instance, the data across the 6sense signal verse, and assuming you're a predictive customer, like when we've built your model as a predictive customer, we've literally gone in and looked at the past, X number of years of all of your opportunities in your CRM, excuse me, to understand which ones are most likely to become opportunities. And so all of that learning and all of that, the graph that we have behind the scenes to associate intent with accounts and opportunities, all this stuff, all of that's available to Revy, right? And any of the other systems that you have connected in with 6sense. And so now there's a brand new opportunity for you to go in. And using 6sense and building segments and pulling reports, like that's going to be the initial thing where it's going to solve massive problems for people, I think, right out the gate. And then what we're already seeing, you're starting to get to go down the path is, everyone's vibe coding right now, right? That's a
Sure.
thing. Like I like to think about it as vibe marketing,
Yeah.
right? Because you can start to get into this thing as like, all right, how was our pipeline last quarter? Oh, it was down a little bit. Like, what's going on with that? Have you seen anything weird? Well, you had less a pipeline from, that were derived by CFOs. Like, oh, okay, what's going on? Do we have coverage? And you can start to go down this logic steps,
Yeah.
right, to uncover what's going on, and like just an interaction and insights that you probably wouldn't even think to figure out beforehand, right? So it unlocks just totally new motions.
We could do so much more with this. And I think this is only the beginning, right? Like this is stage one. I have some predictions on what would happen next that I'll run by you, see what you're thinking. But I have to ask first, like this was just announced today.
Yep.
When is it actually coming out?
So that's the cool thing. Like, we've been kind of sitting behind the wings. Everyone's been releasing agents and stuff like that over the past year or so. And so we've thankfully have ignored the reflex a few times to just like push some stuff out and do that. And so we've been working really hard on this. Now we're at the point, like this is there. I've seen it, I've used it, and the original beta for it, we're going to put it in beta first, right?
Yep.
So we
Makes
can
sense.
get in front of all of
Yep.
our customers.
Yep.
And we're going to start using it. It is generative AI, so it's gonna
Yeah.
there's gonna be things and right. So like we
Yeah.
want to be really clear and
Yeah.
open around like this is not like, hey, magic potion, you do the thing and it's gonna just do all the right. So we want to make sure we want to see how people are using it so we can optimize for the things, right? Because and when we think about agents, you're right, there's like email agents, but for us there's also agents within Revy, which are basically just like specialized tasks that we know, right? So we get this in our hands of our customers as beta like in 2 months. What is it, November? So I think end of January, February, I think is when
Okay.
that's coming out. So really, really soon. And then start to see where people are going, what they're doing with it, right? And then we started like, okay, like 6 QAs and reporting analytics, like that seems to be a primary thing. Like let's get really specialized with the agent that, we're building to make sure that we're like getting really sophisticated within that domain.
Yeah. I love where it's going because it's just better. I don't think any of us love working with SaaS unless the SaaS has some like funny things in it, like email, like
Yeah.
MailChimp used to, and Asana kind of has now. Like most of us would rather just be able to ask a question and get an answer,
Just get
or
the
say
answer.
go and do this and delegate it, right? What I'm excited about is that I think people will vibe code apps, and they say like, oh, software is going to end. I'm like, no, because like all the software companies can vibe code too. So it's like
Yeah.
they're going to keep building on a
Yeah.
competitive advantage and data.
Totally.
There's nothing they can do, but people will probably start to vibe code apps on top of it, and build little things and all
Totally.
little personal extensions. Like the marketplace for extensions will probably die off a little bit.
Yeah.
But eventually I'm like, well, something like this Revy tool can eventually be proactive
Yep.
and show up and be like, hey, well, good morning. It's
Yeah.
good to see you Monday morning. Over the weekend, this is what happened.
Totally.
Here's my plan of attack of what I would like to go and get started on. What do you think?
Yep.
And then you could say, make it so.
Yeah,
and then it'll
exactly.
go into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely some flavor of where we're headed, right? Like, there's a lot of hand wringing too around kind of what this means for us as marketers, and
Yeah.
it's a little bit of like potentially catch-22, right? Like, are we creating the software that's gonna get rid of me at some point? And I don't think that, one, is not realistic, and two, like this is an extension of and really an evolution of marketers primarily, right? Of like kind of our order in the organization, and something like Revy is going to change kind of the way that marketers interact within a go-to-market organization. And like, yeah, there's going to be new motions. Like, I think we will start to see new roles, like go-to-market engineers, go-to-market architects, like Latney spoke about earlier, that are doing more of this vibe marketing type thing, alongside of an intelligence like Revy, who has, the context of all these things, the ability to act on it, but is still very much being informed by the expertise and business acumen and everything that, lives with the marketer.
There's a lot of things that give me hope that we're not going to all lose our jobs, but one in particular is that marketing tends to be a black hole. Like, you can always give it more time, more effort, more talent, and like a marketing department can always take more.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a never-ending thing you have to feed, and there will always be more place. Jobs will change and go up and down. Roles will change, but that will probably continue to be true.
It's gonna be. I mean, if you play it out, right? Like, if you got like autonomous buying agents, you got autonomous selling agents. At some point, they just start buying, selling to each other, and then the whole thing just explodes, right? Because like nothing's happening. So there's always going to be humans in the loop to really orchestrate. And I think just the level of orchestration, our role and involvement in it will just continue to elevate to the kind of the next tier.
So to wrap up, what are you excited about for the future? Like, if you could paint a picture of like what AI, and you could do it in vague terms or be specific if you'd like 3 years from now, maybe even 5 years from now, if you want to be that bold. What does life look like in marketing?
I think it's going to be, in some ways it's going to be similar, but I think in a lot of ways it will be different. I think you'll see a shift away from a lot of like really individual specialized roles into what I think ultimately a good thing for marketing is more mature and more in-demand roles, right? So like we may have like an entry level, like, hey, you're gonna come in and manage my social media, something like that. Like, I think you'll still have bits and pieces of that, and we'll certainly have a funnel. But now I think you'll start to see marketers command more of a demand and presence within the market, similar to like a developer would, right? Like, because now we're not talking, can you push the buttons to press the thing? It's like strategically, how can you think about our business, the market that we're in, how we can go after it, what our competition's doing, and you can scale yourself and your knowledge, right, with something like this. And so I think it will change, a little bit of the order of things within marketing and how, what we're actually able to do, and really how we're seeing kind of within the rest of the organization.
Yeah. So as knowledge and intelligence increase, discernment, wisdom starts to become the thing we all value the most.
Yeah, and I think at the heart, most marketers are really strategists and storytellers, right? And so like you bring those two things and you have something like Revy and the rest of the 6 Sense platform that allows you to focus on those two things and kind of cut out the other work that's like, busy work. Like, it gets really exciting.
Oh, cool. Thanks so much for spending some time with me.
Yeah, man. Been great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.